we're back. We just took a look at our last look at the schedule video of the first half of USA's October 1989 game show block. And just to have a quick recap, here are the first 5 shows of that block. At 12 p.m. it started off with the new Chain Reaction, followed up by 12:30 with Bumper Stumpers. 1 p.m. had the $100,000 Name That Tune of Jim Lang. 1:30 was Wipeout with Peter Tamarkin. And at 2 p.m. we had Tic-Tac-Dough with Wink Martindale. Now that we're all caught up, it's time to jump back into the schedule. And once again, we'd like to thank Desmond D Shannon, who was a Patreon backer of $20, who made this video possible. If you want to become a $5 backer and get your choice of a schedule to look at, or a short-lived game show for 26 weeks or less, feel free to become a Patreon backer at patreon.com/gameshowgumbo. Please do it today. With that said, let's jump back into the schedule.
You gotta look at the schedule, Pascal.
At 2:30, it's the $25,000 Pyramid with Dick Clark. The second half of the schedule starts off with one of the best game shows known to man. I'm not kidding. It is one of the best game shows of all time. After being canceled for the second time in 1988, the Pyramid waits a while and nests in the comforting area of this block. I don't need to tell you how great the show is, but I want to tell you is how forward-thinking picking up Pyramid was for USA. This run of Pyramid lasted 5+ years. This means they could air this block and not have to loop back until well into the mid-90s. It is that thinking that makes Pyramid one of the 4 big pillars of the USA Network game show blocks, with 2 more of those 4 pillars coming up later on in this schedule. It was Pyramid power at its finest, and I don't need to say any more. So let's move on. At 3 o'clock, it's High Rollers with Wink Martindale. It's the last of the Wink Martindale featured shows on this schedule, and it continues to show Wink Martindale in one of the brightest lights possible. Here's another thing that the schedule started to do, as we mentioned about in the earlier episode, but this schedule is when they really started to kick the plan into full gear. Take shows that didn't have the best clearances in the country and put them on the schedule because of how they would make sense with other shows, or because they were dirt cheap to rerun. High Rollers goes into the former of that category because how it was paired up with another show in the schedule coming up. While Wink's version was good, it was marred because of how slow it was compared to the Alex Trebek versions, with games taking more than 1 episode to get through. But you know what? It still was a fine show regardless, even if it being slower than molasses in the middle of winter. That's pretty much my only knock on it. That and the mini games that really didn't fit in at all. Shall we move on? At 3:30 p.m., it's Pressure Luck with Peter Tamarkin. Remember how I said there were 4 pillars of the game show block on the USA Network during this time period? Well, here is number 2. Even though it ran for only 3 years in its original run, it was such a cult classic and a big hit with youngsters who would watch the block that it stayed on until the very end of the block's history. Peter Tamarkin, the big bucks, the contestants, of course those devilish whammies, were always there and people always enjoyed it. And now those kids who watched it on the USA block are now watching it with their kids on the new ABC version with Elizabeth Banks. It's always amazing to me when these things happen, and I have a feeling we're going to get that same feeling with Supermarket Sweep when that debuts on ABC later this year. Hey, it just goes to show you how one iconic part of a game show can carry an entire game show block for almost a decade. Unbelievable. Let's press on. At 4 o'clock, it's Hollywood Squares with John Davidson. I'll tell you this right now, USA Network loved Davidson Hollywood Squares. It made it one of the features in the interstitials that would air in between shows when they have the USA Network logo. You could see a few pictures of Davidson Hollywood Squares when that would air. It's not hard to see why they did this. The antics between Joan, John, Jim J. Bullock, and Shadow Stevens, along with all the guests that would show up, made it a blast to watch. Even if the show wasn't as fast as the Peter Marshall version. The skits were fun to see using visual questions as well as great zingers delivered by Jim J. and Joan, made this a really fun show to watch. It also became one of the pillars of the game show block, having just arrived on the schedule because it was just canceled a month earlier. At this time, it would premiere, and it would stick around until 1994. Now, I was born in 1986, so I grew up with the Davidson version of Hollywood Squares all the way until it left the schedule in 1994. And I gotta say, I still have very, very fond memories of Davidson Hollywood Squares. I just wish it was rerunning somewhere. Wrapping up the schedule at 4:30, it's Couch Potatoes with Mark Summers. This is another show that could have been mistaken as a USA Network original game show, because in its original run in syndication, it really didn't have that many clearances, and it really didn't leave that much of an impact. Despite that, though, it also helped fill a niche in the game show world. A TV trivia game show for those that can't afford cable and watch MTV's remote control. It was also quite timely in the fact that a lot of classic TV shows were being reran in syndication and also on cable to fill out schedules. So this should have been a show to get viewers interested in classic TV. Overall, it is a good show, but the market was changing in 1989 when a lot of game shows were getting axed in favor of talk shows. Honestly, this does seem like the type of show USA would have looked at doing more episodes of as an original, since it was pretty cheap to do. Couch Potatoes would have been a great fit and could have lasted on the block a little longer. So what happened with the schedule as a whole from 1989 on? Well, even though the schedule wouldn't be as big as the 10 game shows as they were airing at the time, it's not to say it wasn't big. I mean, you had the 3 of the 4 pillars make their marks right in 1989. You had Hollywood Squares with John Davidson, Pyramid with Dick Clark, the $25,000 version, and Pressure Luck. Later on, you would get the 4th pillar, and that would be Scrabble of Chuck Woolery. And also during that time period, you would have a 5th pillar in another version of Pyramid with the $100,000 version with Dick Clark making its leap on the schedule. Those 5 shows, combined with other rotating shows, would make the USA Network game show block, and October of 1989 could have been the main point of where it all started and how it got all so big. Well, that's going to do it for me. I thank everyone for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, become a Patreon backer at patreon.com/GameShowGumbo. Until next time, I'm Cindy Sodelman saying bye-bye!